Nina, can you hear me? Can't seem answer those questions at the end. So if you want to kind of get in the queue,
unless somebody's got something urgent they feel they got to say right now. I don't quite understand
answer
why
those
we got hands
questions
raised.
at the end. So if you want to kind of get in the queue,
unless somebody's got something urgent they feel they got to say right now. I don't quite understand
answer
why
those
we got
questions at the end. So if you want to grab something on the printer, so I'll be right back.
Okay. We'll get started as soon as Layla gets back here. She's getting something off the printer. We have more people keep coming in, so. Okay, should we go ahead and start? Now I can't hear you.
Because I'm muted, that's why.
Okay.
Off to the start.
Let's gosh, I get the messages coming in on my phone. What's going on here? Well, let's get started, everybody. I still see people coming in right now. It looks like we got 32 participants. And I know there's probably some people watching it on our live stream YouTube channel and others. But the purpose of this is a little different here tonight. This is not a council meeting. The other councilors are not involved in this at all. There's no decisions being made here. We're not taking minutes or anything. Basically, Layla and I assume we are after dinner speakers and we just finished the Pine Grove potluck because that's the way we used to do this. And Gary Bullard started this about 15 years ago. Each year in January would be the speaker at the monthly Pine Grove potluck, and he'd give everybody an update on what was going on in the city. And I continue that tradition, but obviously with COVID, we haven't been able to do that for a couple of years. We did not do it last year. So Layla is our new city manager, has been here 6 months or so. And we were talking about this and they said, well, we're going to try to do this virtually. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to speak for a few minutes and I'm going to give it to her. And then we'll be glad to take any of your comments or questions. I know some of you already have your hands raised, but we'd like to have to wait that till the end. So anyway, let me start with a couple of comments here. I mean, I'm sure everybody saw that we had a distant tsunami warning on Saturday morning, which was a good little exercise for everybody. I got up and went down to Marzano's Coffee, as I always do, at 7 in the morning, and we were already getting ready for it. We put out our electronic signs at the foot of Lanita and down on Halem Road. And we had the fire, police, the park rangers were out, and our public works people. And everybody seemed to have already had the message that something was going to happen around 8 or 9 o'clock, maybe a 1, 2, or 3 foot surge in the surf. And everybody was off the beach. So it seemed like it'd go well. I don't know if anybody else did, but I didn't notice any change in the water. We were down there till a little after 9 and I didn't see anything. But anyway, that was a good distant tsunami drill. So anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is COVID and how it's impacted all of us for so long. We're now starting our 3rd year. I would have never guessed this was going to last this long. I don't think anybody knows. I was reading the article on the front page of the Oregonia today titled Scientists Are Fearful of an Omicron Sequel. And I guess the bottom line I got out of that article is nobody knows where this is going. It's a different ball game every week. And I know if you don't listen to the community updates, I would remind you about them. The county commissioners every Tuesday at 8 a.m. do an update on what's going on in the county, particularly around COVID. And the hospital is on that call, and so is Tillamook County Health, the Reinhardt Clinic, the mayors of all 7 cities in Tillamook, and the sheriff's deputy or sheriff, and so forth. And it's also broadcast on KTIL radio, so you can just listen to it on the radio. But it's very good to hear what's going on. And let me tell you what I heard about this morning. Basically, our hospitals are full in the state of Oregon. They're rotating people around all the time to find beds. And I guess as of this morning, they had 2 people in the emergency room at Tillamook Adventist that were waiting for a bed, and they found a bed for one of these individuals, and they had to take him to Corvallis, to a hospital in Corvallis. That'll just show you how tight things are right now. We've had 316 cases of COVID in the last 2 weeks in Tillamook County. And I don't know if we all realize, but back in August, which wasn't that long ago, we had cumulative deaths of 5 in Tillamook. And as of today, we're at 55, and we've had 6 deaths this month already. So I guess the point I'm making is this is far from over with, and we just got to keep dealing with it. The numbers just came in for the long Memorial or Martin Luther King weekend, and we had over 28,000 cases in Oregon over the 3-day weekend, and 81 new cases in Tillamook. So we still got a lot of challenges here. I know early on in COVID, I did a lot of community videos, and I kind of stopped doing them. I kind of ran out of things to say because I never thought this was going to go on so long. And I've done a few since then when something important comes out. It's a really good way to get the word out. I mean, hundreds of people look at them. And so I will use it again if I think there's something urgent that we need to get out to the community. I know how much this has impacted everybody. I mean, talking about normally we do this at the Pine Grove potluck. We haven't had potlucks at the Pine Grove now for 2 years. And my wife's been active for years in the women's club. They normally do their showcase of homes as a fundraiser in August. We haven't done that in a couple of years. And I know our popular library sale has been canceled, and we haven't done a 4th of July parade in the last 2 years either, just to name a few. So all our social organizations, I think when this is over with, are going to find themselves going to have to rebuild, find new officers, build their membership, and probably redefine who they are as they go forward. I mean, again, I don't think any of us thought this would go on as long as it has. I think everybody knows that every business in Manzanita is short-staffed. I watched a segment on 60 Minutes, I think it was a week ago, Sunday, talking about why people are reluctant to return to work in the service and retail industry. And that's why these service-oriented businesses are having such a hard time. They just can't find anybody to work with them. You probably noticed that US Bank had to close last week, the one here in town, also the one down in Rockaway, and it was pretty much related to COVID and a shortage of employees. I did drive by the bank today. I didn't go in, but it looked like the US Bank was open today. You know, our city employees and their families have been sick through this. Some of them have gotten sick through this pandemic. We've got them working dispersed throughout the town for their own safety. You know, we've been in that old ambulance quarters now, if you could believe it, for 2 years, and it was going to be a temporary city hall. And frankly, I got to tell you, it's just too small. It's not working. And I know this has had an impact on everybody individually here in town too. I know some people have gotten depressed over this. You're feeling isolated. We had our annual police report at our January council meeting, and I was looking at the numbers, and we had, in 2021, we had 7 suicide attempts in Manzanita compared to 2 the previous year. And the police have done, last year did 620 security checks. So I just encourage everybody to stay connected with your family and friends, particularly if you're living alone. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, I'm going to say something here that might get me in trouble, but just pick up the phone and call 911. A police officer come by your house and help you out. Don't feel isolated. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about, which everybody's talking about, is the building boom. You know, back in 2007, I was on the planning commission, and we were going through the same thing. We had proposals all over the place, and they were going to put a hotel in on that vacant lot between between the Little Apple and the Tavern with underground parking. There's about 50 condos going to go in out on that curve on 101 next to the Adventist Clinic. And the Frank property, which are where those two old houses are on Manzanita, they were going to build a concrete slab back into the back on 3rd Avenue where it slopes down, put in a 120 car parking garage, dedicate 20 spots to the Pine Grove for parking, and then build 20 plus condos on top. We spent at least, I think, a year working with that application, making sure they were in compliance with all the rules and regulations, and they were looking for variances and trying to put more on there than they were allowed to do. But in the end, we finally got down to where they were going to go ahead with it. And I remember standing up and telling these developers, I says, this is not a good thing for this city. You're going to change the character of Manzanita and this whole town. And I'm opposed to this, but I couldn't vote against it because what you find if you've ever listened to a planning commission meeting or served on the planning commission, you can turn things down if you base it on fact. You can't just say no to something because you don't like it. And the thing that saved us, you all remember in 2008, we went into the Great Recession, they called it, and all this came to a screeching halt. All those properties that I talked about, that property out on 101, the Frank property, and others stayed on the market for over a decade. So we got a real reprieve over the last 10 plus years, but now it's all back. I mean, we're in the process, those properties are in the process of being developed, and we're just in a huge building boom. I think everybody's noticed that it seems like every vacant lot in Manzanita is being backfilled with a new home. The 85% of our housing now are in second homes. And we also understand that the state parks, some of you may remember, developed a master plan probably about 10 years ago. They never had the money to put it in play, and they are now going to expand the Halem Bay State Park with more camping capacity back there that will impact us also. And so there's just a lot going on. And I want to talk a little bit about virtual meetings that have come about because of COVID. You know, these have now become the norm for business meetings, even family gatherings. I belong to a book club. We've been on doing virtual book club meetings now for 2 years. I've even had a meeting with my doctor virtually. So it's what the positive thing that it's done is increased access to everybody. Our city council meetings, we used to get at best a dozen people at a in-person city council meeting. The last one we had, including the people that were on our YouTube channel, I think we had 80 people at the council meeting in January. So we're providing huge access because of this. And so when we build our new council chamber, we're going to have to put in all the appropriate electronic equipment so we can continue to provide that virtual access. And it's now required by Oregon law that you have to provide this type of access to people. So we're going to get through this, and I think the community will be better for it. I just don't know when it's going to end. And what we're going to do is just take it as best we can, and everybody hang in there. And as I say, we'll be a better community for it at the end. So now I'd like to introduce Layla Ahman, our new city manager. If those of you that may not have met her, she's been with us for a little over 6 months. And Layla grew up in Portland and vacationed here on the coast. And she has a master's degree from Cornell in regional planning and was the community development director in the city of Milwaukee when she accepted our job offer to be the city manager here. And she now lives here with her family in the community. So I'm going to turn this over to Layla and make a few comments, and then we'll answer your questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective on the state of the city, now 6 months and 17 days in, not counting. But before I say, you know, where I think we're going, I want to talk a little bit about where we are, because I think it's good to know where we're starting from before we decide where we need to go. So I think Manzanita is experiencing what I believe is a real wake-up call, and it should really come as no surprise. This is a vacation town historically. As the mayor mentioned, I came here to vacation. Many of you may have before you made this your permanent or second home. So big livability issues and other concerns that you experience in a bigger city seem to escape us here, or maybe we left the cities to escape those issues. And we escaped them until we couldn't any longer. And now I believe we're faced with some very big livability issues, from housing affordability to how we manage natural resources and regulate the tourism industry in our town. And how do we maintain our financial solvency and become more resilient financially? I think COVID has seemed to amplify the livability issues and has also created a real strong sense of urgency to address them and address them now. At the same time, as I sit here today, I can confidently say that technologically we have some catch up to do, and that impacts our ability to provide service. But we are catching up and we are making tracks. In the 6 months that I've been here, I know we still have a long way to go, but the team I have in place is already making these changes and positioned to continue that work. But it will take time and it will take patience. So now that we have a better idea of where we are, we need to figure out where we're going. And to address these larger livability issues that affect us all, we have to work together, and we have to work together toward a common interest, which means that we have to be able to talk to each other and advance toward a common interest to solve these problems, to plan and to lay the groundwork for a better future. So where do we begin this monumental task? I've had several conversations with the City Council about this over these months, and the council has adopted 3 goals that I believe will guide us into the future. And I'd like to talk through a few of those and my main goals for those goals. The first is what we're calling Level Up Manzanita. We need to be able to keep up with you. You are a very interested public, you're very educated, and you ask lots of questions, and we want to be able to keep up with you. But this means that we need to move from a paper-based system into a digital system so that we can become more efficient, more organized, and provide information in a more accessible way. We need to be able to, this will also benefit us. This will benefit the staff. It will make us more creative and innovative. And it allows us to get the right tools in place to do the work that we need to do. And as the mayor said, we also need a place to do business. We need a home. We have been working on this for nearly 30 years, and the need is now urgent. And we cannot kick this can further down the road than we already have. We have a responsibility to pay our mortgage and to find ways to support the infrastructure that we have, and they are not mutually exclusive. We need systems and a home that are both resilient and can stand the test of time, can stand the test of change in leadership, transition, and change. The second goal is budget forward Manzanita. And I will be the first to admit that I cannot solve decades of issues in one budget cycle, but I do see the need for greater organization through the development of a capital improvement plan and to find funding sources for needed infrastructure and other needs that the city has. We are all well aware of the city's reliance on short-term rental income, but we are also well aware of the impact that visitors have on our services in the community, and there must be a balance. I believe it is our responsibility to diversify our resources and find resources to pay for needed infrastructure by those using it while balancing the demands of growth in our community. I will be convening a group of budget committee members of the public, to advance a revenue diversification strategy so that we can fully evaluate our position and our options to become more financially resilient. But this will not happen overnight. So these 2 goals I've mentioned are operational in nature and will serve to level the city up to meet the demands of this community and to provide the level of service that is more in line with the quality of service I expect. The final goal will set the foundation of who we aspire to be and as we grow together as a community. And I call this Envision Manzanita. Growth is inevitable and it's happening all around us, and we can't fight it. And it's a wasted effort to try, but we can manage it. And we can even leverage aspects of growth to our benefit. I think we can all agree that many of our guiding documents no longer adequately reflect who we are because we have changed. So it's time to ask, who do we want to be and how do we want to get there? It's going to take a concerted effort on all of our parts to come together and have conversations about who we want to be. We need to be able to focus on the things that bring us together and not the differences that keep us apart, because there are far fewer of those and they don't deserve the limelight right now. It's going to require collaboration and, most importantly, compromise. It's going to require looking beyond our own personal desires, but rather addressing the larger livability issues that affect all of us. How do we persevere and enhance the quality of life we've come to expect here? How can we effectively coexist with each other? I believe by establishing a vision of growth and conducting a robust public outreach process to update our comprehensive plan will start to move us in the right direction. It provides an avenue for us to not only have conversations about the livability issues we're facing, but it allows us to develop policy that we can implement and realize the future that we want. How can we create policy that doesn't just sit on a shelf, but can translate into action and is updated and is a living document that keeps up with the changes around us? To do that, we must start from the same place, and we must assume that all of our intentions are well-meaning to the betterment of the greater good. We must work together to point out roadblocks and not create them. We have so much to do. So the question is, can we meet this moment? And I believe that if we come with these principles, if we bring our best selves, we can not only meet this moment, but we can exceed our own expectations of ourselves. This is a special and a sacred place to me, and it's worth protecting. It's worth loving, and it's worth sharing. So this is a call to action to all of the members of our community. We, as a city manager and a city council, can help lead the way, but it's up to you where we go from here. So what is the state of the city? Well, the state of our city is we're ready to serve. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Layla. That was great. So now, assuming this is, again, this is an after dinner program, we'll be glad to take comments or questions from anybody in the audience. Looks like we have 40 participants here tonight. I don't know how many people are out on YouTube, but Nina, why don't you give me Brian T first? He had his hand up before we even sat down, and there he is.
Brian, you should be able to unmute.
Speak, Brian. Well, if it looks like he's having trouble getting himself unmuted. We want to go to somebody else. We had 3 people that had their hands up immediately.
Should we go to Deb Tinnen now?
Okay, go to Deb. We can come back to Brian.
I'm sorry, I must have hit that by mistake, but good job, guys. Thank you for
Well, thanks, Deb, for
enjoying dinner.
So you hit your hand raised button by mistake, is that it?
Yeah.
That's okay. We're glad to hear from you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Donna Miller.
Okay.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, hi, Donna.
Hi. I believe my comment is appropriate for this State of the City presentation. The Manzanita Comprehensive Plan's goal is to guide development in a way which will be of greatest value to residents of the city to make a positive contribution to the quality of their lives. One of these objectives states to enhance the quality of residential areas with public improvements such as adequate storm drainage systems. This plan has been ignored and grown stale because of the other interests of our mayor and his long-term council supporters. While promoting tourism by approving wineries, brewery, whiskey bars, by allowing short-term rentals to surpass the mandated 17.5 cap, by purchasing a $1.5 million property without citizen knowledge or input, to build, in Mayor Scott's own words, a Taj Mahal City Hall, by allowing a critical moratorium on dune grading to lapse, and by ignoring our failing infrastructure, we residents have been put on the back burner. Our storm drainage systems, made worse with a plethora of new construction, with inadequate planning and follow-through for water drainage and landscape plans, are outdated, patched, and create water havoc for residents. Myself, I'm fearful that the undermined guardrail and road on College and Epo is close to collapse, hopefully not taking people with it. It is time for the mayor and his council supporters to address the stability of our residents and our infrastructure, to take action to improve our city for the residents. My question, when will this happen? Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. That's a pretty broad question. I don't know that there's a short answer to it, unfortunately. Do you have anything to add to that, Layla?
Yeah, I would say that we're starting that now. I think that the work that we have talked about doing, what I just mentioned today in terms of budgeting forward, is really to think about how we can develop the resources we need to maintain and enhance the infrastructure that we have. I think the points you made with respect to the comprehensive plan are also well timed and are very obvious to me. There's many symptoms that have come to my attention in the time that I've been here that are indicative of the need to update that. These are things that take time and thought and participation, and I believe that we are on the path to do all of those things.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have somebody else?
We do. Next is Kayleen.
Hi, Kayleen.
Hello. Yes, I have a question for Mayor Mike Scott. I recently downloaded Manzanita's comprehensive plan, which I understand is out of date, but I'm going to ask about Objective 7. It states that Manzanita will foster housing and living environments to meet the needs of families of different size, income, age, taste, and lifestyle. How has Manzanita fostered this in the 14 plus years you have served as councilor and mayor? I see no families with small children living here, few young couples, no workforce housing, and near zero long-term rentals. What I do see is the city giving permits for larger and larger SDRs in our neighborhoods and approving new developments perfect for second homeowners. I believe you just said 80%. What things has the city been doing in the past years to increase workforce housing, rentals for young couples starting their careers, and family homes? Thank you.
Well, that's a very difficult question. As we all know, what seems to drive the housing here is people that are quite affluent, spending considerable amounts of money for property. Have risen prices up so high, makes it very difficult to get in and provide, less expensive housing for families and so forth. I have been working closely with Erin Scar from the County Commissioner's Office and her housing committee to address these problems. It's not just a problem here; it's a problem in the entire county. Long-term rentals have just disappeared, and it's a difficult problem. I don't personally have the total answer, but I'm working with people to try to find it. Anyway, do you have anything to add to that, Layla?
I do, and I think it's a really, really important issue. There are a number of ways that cities can affect the potential for housing types. What we can't do is change the market and determine tenure. So that's who owns or who rents. And so we have little control over that. But one of the things that will lead to be part of the comprehensive plan update and the visioning process is whether we hear from the community if this is something that's super important to them. And I know that I've heard it from pretty much everybody I've talked to. And the one key way that you can affect housing is to increase supply and supply of the type of housing that's affordable to folks. And so we have to take a hard look at the policies that we have in place currently and the regulations we have in place. And in this instance, I'm referring to the zoning code and whether or not it promotes additional housing types that are less expensive. And so that's the one key way that local governments can impact that if they aren't using incentives in other ways. We also have opportunities potentially to do joint development projects. So using our resources to leverage the type of development we want to see. And so that's something that the council can talk about as the year, in the coming time. But I think there are mechanisms that we can put in place. But first, we have to have the conversation with the community too, to identify this as a need so that we can start to develop policy and implementation measures in order to get there. But again, I can't say it enough. The chief way to impact housing is to increase supply of all housing.
Yeah, in all the years I've lived down here, I have never seen the situation that we're in right now. There are virtually no homes for sale in Manzanita. And if a home does jump onto the market, it is sold the same day it's listed. And this has gone on now for some time, which puts huge pressure on prices upward, as you can imagine.
Right. I would add too that we have a 0% vacancy rate in our region. And that's indicative of a massive shortfall of rental housing countywide. So we're not alone in this, but we have to be part of the solution eventually.
So did Brian ever figure out how to unmute himself?
It doesn't look like it, not yet. Maybe he stepped away. Do you want the next one? Karen Small?
Sure, whoever's next.
Karen, you can unmute.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I have a specific question. A couple of years ago, I asked about the water tower that I had recently learned was not really made for holding water, but and it was a temporary solution for a while. And one of the city workers in that meeting said that they knew about that and that was being planned for, it was being taken care of, and I don't see that anything has happened.
Boy, I don't have any knowledge of that. You, Layla? Temporary water tower? And you're muted.
You're
Layla.
muted, Leila. I just brought Dan in too.
Yeah, I was just saying, Dan has been working on this. We actually just talked about putting it on a city council agenda, and he's here.
Oh, very good.
Yes, I can speak to that. So yes, all of our reservoirs are not seismically rated. It's something the city knows about. We know about it because we've been doing several different studies. We are currently wrapping up a grant funded on the reservoir site to look at replacing it. As part of this grant, it paid for some studies and essentially up to 10% of the engineering. So we have kind of a rough idea what the cost is, what our plan is. After this grant is completed, which I'm hoping we will have the grant wrapped up within the next 30 days, I'm going to be working on the next phase of the grant to take us to 30% design. And so we can keep this ball moving. Replacing reservoirs, unfortunately, is not an overnight thing. They're very expensive. So we're working on this at a grants to help pay for it and offset the cost. So that way it helps out all the water payers. And so, but we won't let it stall out. We're keeping it moving.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were with us tonight, or I would have called on you right away on that issue. Do we have any other comments or questions out there, Nina?
It looks like Brian had his mic off for a second. I don't know if he's ready. Otherwise, we can move on to Donna Miller again.
And one, there he is.
Hello?
You're there, Brian. You have the
Yeah,
floor,
I got
my
a
friend.
question about those, when are you gonna put those trash cans down on the beach?
Come on, Brian. This is a serious conversation here.
Oh, I'm being serious. What are you talking about?
Do you have anything else you want to ask us tonight, Brian?
No, that was it.
Okay, well, thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
Brian's been joking with me about that for years.
Oh.
He wants trash cans down on the beach. Anyway, did you have somebody else there?
Yeah, Donna Miller has her hand raised again.
Okay.
I just want to, I guess, ask the mayor, maybe both of you, when we're talking about the lack of workforce housing, the lack of housing for families, do you see the correlation by encouraging STRs, allowing the cap to keep getting higher, realtors using STRs as a means of selling properties at higher rates? I mean, I know this for a fact, that they're telling people, hey, this can be an STR, you can make a lot of money here, blah, blah, blah. And, LLCs are buying properties here, groups are buying properties here to use as short-term rentals. In 10 years' time, I bet our number of STR companies has doubled or tripled. And we used to have a lot of rentals here in town. We used to have kids here in town. I've been here 32 years. And if we cut back on STRs, we again can become a community. And I just wondered, do you guys see that correlation?
Well, let me say, we have, in my mind, the most effective short-term rental ordinance in the state, and it's enforced. There are some cities that have ordinances, but they don't enforce them, and then they're just a suggestion because people will take advantage of the situation. When I became mayor, we had not enforced this ordinance, and we determined that our short-term rentals had ballooned to 30% of the housing stock. When we put the ordinance into effect 30 years ago, we capped it at 17.5%. It's still capped at 17.5%. But we started an enforcement procedure. It took 2 years, and we had people in municipal court virtually every month for 2 years, fining people, taking their licenses. In one large case, we even ended up in federal court. But after 2 years, we got, in my opinion, and others, we got what we call pirate rentals under control. People don't rent here if they don't have a valid license, and they know we'll come looking for them if they do. We currently have 259 short-term rental licenses here in town. What you have to understand is we are surrounded by a huge community that is unregulated and is part of the Tillamook County. So we have 259 short-term rentals capped at 17.5%. The county has over 1,000. The zip code for Manzanita is a little less than 700 people. The zip code for Neocani is 2,498. All these people that surround us use our community when technically they're not in the city limits. But there is clearly a phenomenon with short-term rentals going on throughout the world. I mean, Portland, everywhere. It is the game right now. And we have, it's just, as I say, I mean, I'll stand, we have an effective short-term rental ordinance that's being enforced. This does have a cap. There's no other city in the state of Oregon that has anything like that. Some other cities have used our ordinance as a template for what they've done. And I've even gone down to Salem and testified in front of the legislature on this issue. So that's how, and we had a short-term rental work group that spent over a year working on livability issues, and we tackled a bunch of them, and we have more. But this is not an issue that we are ignoring. So, do we have anybody else, Nina?
Yeah, we have Karen Small again.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on Brian's comment about the garbage cans on the beach. And I don't think it's a joke. I was rather offended by that response. I think if there was a way for people to put garbage along the beach, not just at the end of Laneda, but on several other spots, that people might join the few of us that pick up trash off the ocean if there was a place to put it. which there has been a tremendous amount with the king tides and the tsunami. So I really think that that's a good idea. And I don't know if Brian is joking. I bet not. It's something
Well,
that would
let me
really
interrupt you.
improve, it would really improve our city to have that.
Not to offend you at all, Karen, on that. Brian's a friend of mine. It's an inside joke. And it was not a serious comment. So
Well, my comment is serious.
I understand, but Brian's wasn't. The issue with the, we have the dog stations and the trash pickup, and gosh, is Dan still with us? Do you want to make a comment about trash? It's a phenomenal problem and a big responsibility for Public Works. Anyway, do you want to make a comment about trash, Dan?
Sure, we do. We see a lot of trash. We pick up a lot of trash that people leave at the doggy stations. The toughest part is when they stuff it in the doggy stations, it becomes a problem. It was last year or year before last, to help with that issue, we installed an actual full trash can at the intersection of North and County Road. Now, the state parks is who manages the beaches. And if it's something that council would like me to look more into, I can probably work with the state parks and see what they would like to do with it, because it is their jurisdiction. It is outside our city and outside the city limits, and like I said, it belongs to them. But there might be something out there we can see about doing.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Other than that, we've had a couple of people have asked several questions. We got time for a couple more questions? Is there somebody new out there who'd like to ask a question?
Mark is next.
Okay, Mark.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Oh, great. I did have a comment about the STRs, and I think this is one of those causation and not, well, basically over 80% of Manzanita homes are not renting. So I think the STR issue is important, but it is a fraction of the issue of growth, because the huge majority of Manzanita houses are not renting. Therefore, the problem is not renters. The problem is there are many of us who like to live here regardless of if we rent or not. The bonus is the renters actually bring money into our coffers. So, we have to pay our policemen. So we have to be very practical here. And I'm glad that we're talking about this and, juggling the pros and the cons and how we all going to afford to live here, basically. And I have to say, there are children in Manzanita. There are two very cute kids who live 4 houses from me up here on EPO. So I can anecdotally say, and they have a cute dog too. So there are children in Manzanita, however few that may be. Have a great evening, guys.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, there are a lot of second homes here that are not rented, and sometimes we get confused, and if we see a lot of people in a house, we think it's short-term rentals. There are people that own property and have their family and friends down for a weekend, and that's the vast majority of people that we see down here. So, do we have anybody else, Nina?
We have Kayleen again. And
Is there anybody else other than Kayleen? Kayleen's is asked a question already.
How about Michael? You can unmute.
Okay.
Hello, Commander. Hello, Layla. I just wanted to thank you both, having been a resident in the area for about 14 or 15 years. I do not remember reaching out by the city government the way you two are doing. So I just wanted to commend you both for doing that, and thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Do we have anybody else new that would like to ask a question?
No one else. We have Mark again. I might have cut him off too
Well,
early.
I think everybody could have one question. Well, I want to thank everybody. It looks like we had about
Okay.
42 participants here tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this after dinner presentation that was a little different than it normally would be. But thank you all for joining us, and have a good evening.
Good evening.